Hello, my name's Gia Mills, and I've been a celebrity makeup artist for the past 20 years. I'm also the founder of sweat-friendly cosmetics brand Skin in Motion, and welcome to True Reflections. On True Reflections, we go behind the curtain and find out what your favourite celebrities really feel about their appearance when the glare of the media is upon them. My guest today is a TV presenter, a chef, the owner of Seoul Bird restaurants, and whom is appearing at the Taste of London this Friday, the 20th of June at Regent's Park in London, as part of the K-Food Barbecue Cook School. So, to tell her beauty journey, I am delighted to welcome to True Reflections the French-trained, Korean-American, Londoner as well, chef Judy Joo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very, very much. I have absolutely loved looking into your background and how you've sort of come through in the cooking world, what your journey has been. So I'm looking forward to delving deep into all sorts of different
Really
areas.
random. It's not been a straight road at all.
So first of all, you were born in the States,
Mhm.
Korean parents, and talk me through sort of early days of what you saw beauty to be like. Who did you look
Huh.
up to back in the day?
Gosh. Beauty back then, I mean, this is the 1970s, right?
Yes.
And particularly in the States, it was just all about Barbie. It was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Barbie doll, unattainable kind of standards of beauty. It was very much that kind of Stepford wife type of feeling. And I was like, my sister and I were the only specks of color in our entire school. So yeah, no, it was not a diverse place at all. And so it was hard. Like I remember wishing I had blonde hair and, if asking my parents if I could dye my hair and stuff. And so it was, you just want to be like everybody else at that age.
Because all the TV shows,
Yes.
all the things we watched was all there was a certain look that, it was straight hair, it was usually blonde for an American,
Mhm.
and they were just tall and the sort of Amazonian, like Christy Brinkley and the Brooke
Completely.
Shields,
Yes.
and I remember watching telly going, "I just don't fit that mold," and my mother cut my hair short, and I looked like a little boy,
Yeah.
and I was like, "I just wanna look like those glamorous women."
Completely.
It was
Completely.
and
Yeah.
you just didn't feel like you kind of were up to scratch at that
Yeah,
age.
I just didn't feel like you belonged,
Yeah.
especially when, you are of a different race, And so that was tough. Yeah.
And when did you start seeing someone that represented you that you could identify with? What age do you think you were?
I mean, I remember there was one news anchor who was Chinese American, Connie Chung. She was on, I think it was CBS News, and I just remember seeing her, thinking she was so cool.
Yeah.
And that was the only person that looked like me on television for decades.
How,
Decades.
how old were you
I
then?
was young. I was little.
Okay.
I mean, she was one of the anchors when, in the 70s throughout the 80s and stuff. And so, um, but that just kind of gave you an idea that there is somebody that looks like you that is in the media, that, represents a different type of beauty. But it wasn't until much later, I mean, this is also a time when I was like embarrassed by my lunchbox, right? And so, and now coming full, kind of full 180 to now everybody's like obsessed with Korean food. It's really, fascinating to
Oh,
see that.
you were embarrassed about what the food that was in. I thought you meant
My
just sort of it
lunchbox.
didn't have Snoopy on the front
No,
or
no,
something,
no, no.
or actually what was
What
in the
was in
food.
it? Yeah, because like my
Interesting.
parents were like packing me like, Korean food lunch and I was like, desperate to wanted to eat it because I loved it, but then also like embarrassed by it,
Because it was
and people
different.
and also people making fun of me, I just like, can you please just pack me, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or like ham and cheese sandwich and everything and
Well, your nutrition was probably a lot better.
oh, completely. I
Knowing
know.
American diets haven't always
Yeah.
been famed for having
No.
sort of packed with all the good
Yeah.
nutrients that you need.
Definitely.
But
Definitely.
so that's interesting. And beauty-wise, did you take on the sort of American mantle of kind of getting into the beauty world quickly, or did you sort of keep away from it because you couldn't see anyone that you could identify with?
I mean, I think like every teenage girl, even back then, I think it's very different now. They're starting
Mm.
earlier, girls, and
Yes.
and doing a lot more of it. And I feel like, plastic surgery has kind of become a lot more normalized, which we'll get into later. But back then, we're always playing around with makeup, probably, in high school years and stuff. But it wasn't anything like it is now. Like there were no false lashes that were an everyday thing. There was none of this, like lashes in the brows and
But there's so
you
much more
know,
access. We had no access. We kind of
zero.
had the odd magazine,
Yeah.
the odd person you saw in the movies putting makeup on, you're like, ooh. But now I think because they're so well educated, it's a
Mhm.
very different world. And I
Yeah.
think I'm looking forward to going deeper into that with you.
Yeah.
But did you have any classic makeup fails? I love finding out people's sort of
Oh
classic
gosh.
younger makeup fails, things that
Yeah.
went a bit wrong.
Definitely. I mean, I was a bridesmaid in a girlfriend's wedding, and I was the only Asian or person of color in her wedding party, and she paid for everybody to get their makeup done and everything. And this was in the middle of like Martha's Vineyard somewhere, so like kind of middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this makeup artist had never done anybody of color or seen any other face shapes and stuff. And she actually drew in with a black pencil a double eyelid on me.
Why?
Because she just didn't
That's
she was it was
extraordinary.
so bizarre. It looked like I was a clown. And she just had no idea of how to just use my natural features like almond shape eyes and monolids or whatever and just enhance that. She just basically had to like make my eyes Western somehow with a pencil and do everything. And then she had no other colors that would work for me. So everything was like very pinky and like, for pink undertones and like,
Not the
I'm
yellow.
yellow undertones.
Yeah.
And so everything was like clashing, like blue eyeshadow and all this. It just looked like a freak. Like I looked like I washed it all off. And
Well, good. I'm
yeah,
glad you did. And
yeah.
I think what's so many people I interview, first of all, they don't always see themselves in the media.
Mm.
All sorts of women didn't see themselves. And what I love now is that your people see themselves more.
Mhm.
And I think we're all becoming more educated. If I sit down, if I'm doing someone's makeup, I always, and it's something I don't do all the time, or it's a skin tone I'm not used to, I kind of talk to them and go, talk me through.
Yeah.
Because, I do certain types of people more often than I do others. And I want to make sure that person feels comfortable. And I've done some research, but then you kind of, what do you like? What does feel comfortable for you?
Yeah.
And it's so important because, we've been talking before how beauty can have, how we were talking before how beauty can have, such power, make you feel. I think what you were saying, it kind of is like this sort of magical thing.
Completely. They're miracle workers.
Yeah.
People like you are miracle workers. It's where all the magic happens.
Yeah.
I come in to a morning show before I'm filming something looking like a total wreck. My hair is kind of like today. Like my hair was wet when I came in. My hair is white. I have zero makeup on, maybe a bit of moisturizer, and then that's it. And I come out looking like a totally unrecognizable entity.
Yeah.
Like
Particularly
completely TV makeup
Yeah.
is thick.
You look at yourself and you're like, whoa. And they're like, trust me. I say like people, trust me. You get in front of those lights and suddenly you'll pop and you'll be like, thank you. Because if you don't do too much,
Yeah.
people just get washed out.
Yeah.
But so you were in America, you went to Columbia University. What did you study?
Engineering.
You did engineering,
Yes.
obviously. And then you went to Goldman Sachs.
I was at Goldman and also Morgan Stanley.
Morgan Stanley, but then you did a U-turn into the world of cooking. What was the reason for that? How
Yeah,
you did that?
I was working ridiculous hours in finance, like literally easily 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
Like easily, maybe
Well, they were
120.
famous. It was famous for
Yeah,
the horrible hours, Goldman
completely.
Sachs.
And back then, this is before Me Too. This is before any of this woke stuff. You were allowed to systematically abuse younger people.
Yes, you
It was, and that was just part of the rite of passage, and so I was doing all-nighters all the time at work, just like showering at the gym across the street, coming right back to my desk. It was normal. It was par for the course, right? And
That would have been in your 20s.
yeah, that was my early 20s. And then I remember, and then I moved out to San Francisco and I was working New York market hours on the West Coast. So I was up
Ooh.
at 3 a.m. in my desk by like 3:20, 30. It was just ridiculous. And then still traveling all the time. So flying to LA just for dinner, taking the last flight back, getting home at like midnight, sleeping 2 hours, it was ridiculous, unsustainable. And then I just was like sick all the time. I basically got sinusitis and laryngitis for like 9 months. I could not shake it. My doctor was like, you are just gonna deteriorate. I was
Burn out
so
completely.
skinny. I was burning out, seriously.
And you probably, even a lot of makeup's not going to help
No,
in that sort of scenario.
no, yeah, I was just breaking down. And I was engaged to a guy, and he was like, why don't you just do what you want to do? Like just like just follow your dream. Is like, this is unsustainable. You don't love it. Like, and I always felt drawn to the world of cooking. I'm sure you felt this for
Mm.
makeup, right? And it's just a passion or like an itch you have to scratch, right? And I was like, I don't know what this is going to lead to, but there's always a push and a pull. So I was kind of being, I felt like I didn't like where I was. I was sick. I didn't love it. I didn't have a passion for the markets,
Yeah.
right? Some people love capturing alpha and finding the jigsaw of the markets. I didn't have that. For me, I was always reading cooking magazines. I was always reading cookbooks. I loved reading, like restaurant reviews. I loved the transformative spaces that restaurant created. This idea that you can walk through a doorway and you can leave all your problems at the door just for a few hours, and you were taken all of a sudden to Greece or Italy or to China or to Korea or to, all these different places
I
in the
love
world,
that. I've never
right?
actually sat and thought about it in
Yeah,
that
if they do it
way.
well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so and they transport you, and you're creating memories. And I loved that whole experience. And to me, it was like theater, going to restaurants, and and it's like eating with somebody, sharing a meal with somebody. Like, this is why food is so highly emotive. It's the only thing other than sex
Yeah.
that engages all of the senses that you can do with somebody else.
And
Right.
it's and going back for primitive sort of man, it's the place that everyone would come together. So
Yes.
it's the community
Bonding,
thing,
community,
because we are
sharing.
social animals, and that is
Exactly.
it's the ultimate. And actually, if you're ever eating at home on your own, you just feel a bit displaced, and you're like,
Mm.
I need to put the telly on because I can see,
Yeah.
or I can put the telly on so I
Yeah.
can see somebody, because you don't want to be on your own.
Mhm.
So you moved into that world, into the cooking world, and how was that from a bit of a culture shock, kind of complete change?
Complete change. I started at the bottom in the cooking world. I worked my way through, various different restaurants of various different Michelin star levels. And, I,
Hello, everyone. I love
yeah,
it. Sort of you changed, and then very quickly it sounds like you went into these incredible
yeah.
restaurants.
And, well, you start at the bottom. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was literally, juicing lemons and
Mm.
picking off the stems of spinach leaves and, just parboiling potatoes and stuff like this, like, it's not rocket science,
Yeah, but you had a very strong work ethic.
Oh,
Right, I
yeah,
start there, and I
completely.
just really
Yeah,
grasped.
definitely. So, and they definitely haze you as well.
Mm.
And I'm used to hazing. So
What's hazing?
hazing is kind of like boot camp, where
Yeah.
they kind of give you the worst jobs to see if you
Okay.
survive, and so it's like, here are 4 crates of lemons and a fork, like, juice them all, like that kind of stuff, and so just to see if you'll survive or if you'll crack or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I definitely started at the bottom and worked my way up slowly. And I never thought it would lead to what I'm doing now, honestly, but I think that,
Because
through it all, you make your own path, you figure it out. And
because it was, and it is quite, has been. It's so funny you're talking about hours, because obviously you've gone almost from the frying pan into the fire, from
Mm,
Goldman Sachs hours to going into sort of chef's hours, and actually those can be as brutal in different ways, and
yeah.
or at least very unsociable. So you might get a
Oh,
bit of a
completely.
lie-in, but then you're working really, really late at
Yeah.
night, which can put a lot of pressure, and it's very male, has been very male centric.
Both of them are.
Well, they both are. So how did you
Engineering too.
yeah. How did you find moving into that space? How was the male
Yeah.
experience different?
So, engineering school, I think back then, I think we were less than 20% female.
Mm.
And then I worked on the trading floor. I wasn't investment banking, I was in finance. So working on the trading floor, like 500 people, 10 screens in front of me, and
That's very
40, so it was
male.
very male. I was the only female professional on my entire desk.
Wow.
And
Golly.
and then I moved into kitchens, and there are only like 2 women or 3 women in the kitchens back then, for the entire brigade, if you're lucky.
Did you embrace being a female and come with a female attitude, or did you sort of embody the sort of masculine energy to kind of mirror them?
No, I never really felt that I needed to embody masculine energy,
Good.
and it's funny because, now it's different because of the whole Me Too and the woke stuff. But when I first started chefing, like, I never cut my hair off. I never, still wore makeup, etc. And people always like, "Oh, but you don't look like a chef. You're a chef. You don't look like a chef."
I love, what makeup did you wear when
And
you were
so,
chefing?
oh, waterproof everything.
Yeah.
It's like plastic. Well, I didn't wear too much because you're just gonna sweat it off, but I always wore a bit of mascara.
Yeah.
Like, mascara is my friend. You know,
Yeah.
I think you just need a little bit of mascara and just, more about skin care, like, moisturizers, maybe a tinted moisturizer and always just like lip balm.
Yeah.
I'm addicted to lip balm to the point I don't think my lips make any more natural moisture on their own because I'm always just slathering stuff on my lips
That's
and
good.
stuff.
Well, it's
Yeah.
good. You need to look after them, and
Yeah. No,
particularly in
definitely.
a quite a steamy, hot environment,
Yeah.
you kind of like all sorts
Mhm.
of different sort of. The atmosphere probably changes quite a lot
Oh,
from going into
completely.
cold fridges through to
Oh, yeah.
heat to.
Oh, definitely.
But that's good.
Definitely.
It's lovely to hear that you kept that sort of right. I'm just carry on being me and didn't feel the pressure because
Yeah.
you worked with some incredible chefs. You worked with Gordon
Definitely.
Ramsay.
Yes. Yeah.
How was that working with someone like him? Did
Well, he
he?
was out of the kitchens by the time I was there, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of popping in, but his culture was there, I would
Yeah.
say, but it's like I was coming from trading floors where you're screaming all day and you're lining up, $2 billion trades and hedging and everything, and the market's moving and so my level of stress was beyond astronomic, right? And then working in kitchens, I'm like, if somebody gets their meal a minute late, it's not the end of the world, right? The repercussions kind of end in the dining room. You're not going to implode an economy, which has happened by rogue traders. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, I was like, you can smooth
It's
things.
just a meal, and you
It's
can
a
manage
meal, and
it.
yes, their reputations, and yes, if Michelin's in, it's a big thing, you know what I mean? But it's a different type of stress, I
Mm.
guess, and plus I wasn't the one in charge. What was different though is that when you're working at banks or a lot of institutions, like when you're hired, and this is when, finance and Wall Street hired the best and the brightest, they only recruited at 8 different schools, and you're with all these like, wide-eyed puppy, like all these, kids who just want to learn. When you work in kitchens, you're there to produce. Nobody wants your opinion. You're not there to create. You're there to just do production and to make everything the same way day in and day out and not change anything.
Mm.
So nobody wants to hear any type of creative thoughts out of you, period, until you get to a certain level.
That you also worked at the restaurant in the kitchen in Playboy in
Yes.
Mayfair.
Yes.
How was that?
So that was, I thought about that post long and hard before I took it because I do consider myself a feminist, right?
Mm.
And I was like, do I want to do this? This is weird. I'm like, can I tell my parents? Like, you know what I mean? It was just like all of things. My parents are very conservative. But I really researched the brand and, and I realized that, and Hugh Hefner was alive at that time,
Yeah.
very much, he came to the opening, etc. And they were relaunching the Playboy Club in all of its 1960s, 70s glory. So very madman, coquettish, very retro.
This is the one in Mayfair.
Yes, in
Yeah.
Mayfair, right? And they were bringing back all of that kind of like charm of that era, tuxedos and everything. So I was
Did
like,
they have the bunny girls?
yes, they did. And the bunny girls were wearing the 1960s costumes. So two stockings, very low cut, like I wear less clothing on the beach. Like this is not a bikini, and like you look at some perfume ads and like it's like soft porn practically
Mm.
these days, So I was like the bunnies in their 1960 costumes can't even compete to this,
Yeah. It was a uniform. It was
It was a
very
uniform,
strict. The whole how
very
they were
strict uniform, a one piece, and it wasn't even that low cut, and there weren't and the bunnies aren't even allowed to bend over to show their boobs.
because they have to sort of curtsy
Yes,
with
you
their
have to.
there's a very specific
It's
way.
bunny dip, and so
Yeah.
they're never allowed to lean over because that is not considered classy,
Mm.
And so it was kind of the most strict finishing school that they had to do in order to become a bunny. And there's bunny graduation and all this stuff, and picking the girls. We called it the bunny hunt and everything. So,
And did
but
they have to have it was their makeup rules as well, the bunny
oh,
girls?
completely,
Oh,
oh
do you
yeah.
know any of what they were?
They all had to, it was never too much makeup. Less is more.
Okay.
So this is the whole thing of being classy. Like they weren't allowed, like nails had to be a certain length. They're only allowed certain colors. Like it was very much this classy 1960s vibe, a bit of lashes, but nothing tacky, like nothing too
Interesting.
much. It was all, it was very, I would say it was polished, I would say.
Which you
It
don't
was enough.
associate. You don't
Yeah.
associate plague bunny girls as being high end polished. You seem it trashy, but it's lovely to hear that it's not.
But because this is the 1960s
Yeah.
brand, so they were bringing back that kind of um, almost like coquettish era, like a little bit flirty,
And did the atmosphere? What was the clientele like in the Playboy
So the
Club?
clientele was a whole mix of people, and it was because it was a casino, there was a sports bar, there was a fine dining restaurant, there was a regular bar, there was a fine cocktail like mixology bar. There were so many. There was a cigar terrace. There were so many different rooms to
Mm.
it. So it was like an entire club. So they really tried to attract people to join who were not just about gaming and just didn't want to sit at the tables. Plus, there were private, gaming rooms also. So we had a lot of women members also, and we had people who were just there to kind of be part of this relaunch, who remember the brand from their parents or something, and also the people who also just wanted to game. But they also had fantastic parties, so they were doing all the parties that they used to throw at the Playboy Mansion. So the Midsummer's Night Dream party, the New Year's Eve parties, the Halloween parties, and they were epic. Everybody would get
I did
dressed
a
up to
makeup
them.
job actually, a
Me too.
Halloween party makeup job for guests at
Oh,
the Playboy Club years ago, and it was very interesting, and
fun.
I like the vibe there. But that's
Yeah.
really lovely to hear that there was an element of sophistication, and it didn't
Oh,
have that
no.
vibe,
I think the
and you
brand
felt
changed
comfortable.
over the years, but this was, like, trying to bring back that, like, the glamour, because it used to be the #1 restaurant in London.
Ah.
This was the flagship, so they were trying to bring back that era,
Mm.
like that Mad Max era, right?
Yeah.
Or
It's
the
got
Mad
such a
Men
great,
era.
yeah, a
Yeah.
great brand identity, and it's why not do that? And I think it sounds right.
Definitely. And so, so I thought about it, and then I realized, like, in all my research, that there are only like a handful of super brands out there, and so you have to respect that it's a super brand. That bunny head is recognized all over the world. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of Africa or in the middle of China or whatever. Everybody knows that little bunny head. It's up there with Disney, Coca-Cola. I forget some of the others, but there are only
Mm.
like a handful of super brands, as they call them. And then Hugh Hefner was the first person to put, an African American on the cover of a magazine. He was the first person in the United States also to give LGBTQ rights to all of his employees, so he really was a pioneer and like kind of,
He's been
a,
misinterpreted in quite a
yeah.
lot of ways,
Oh,
and
definitely. Yeah,
I think it's a love-hate relationship with from a Me Too movement because he did do
completely.
some things, but then I think
Oh, completely.
there was the other side of the coin.
Definitely, definitely.
And
And I was just chefing, so I was
yeah,
like, okay, so, but
but you
and
pick
it
up on the
was,
culture in a
oh,
place.
definitely, definitely.
But also Korea is very famous for its beauty ranges,
Yes,
and the Korea
K-beauty.
K-beauty is huge. But what I find fascinating is how many people now in Korea, how much plastic surgery they're
I
having.
know.
Tell me about it.
You know what? It's kind of crazy because they're all getting one type of plastic surgery and everybody looks the same. It's one of these cultures where conformity and is kind of celebrated. And I always say that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Okay.
And so if there's one trend and if it's one lipstick color, it sells out throughout the entire country. It's that type of culture.
So the tribal mindset is be the
Yeah.
same, don't be
Mm-hmm.
different.
Yeah.
That's quite restrictive.
It is.
So
It's a
they're
small
having,
country.
but
Yeah.
they are one of the highest rate of plastic surgery.
Yes. I think they outranked Brazil for plastic surgery, I think from chest up, and then Brazil's all about the bottom. So like the BBL isn't big in Korea, but the nose job, the boob job, the face, and they're doing extreme plastic
Well,
surgery.
are they trying to
So
look
yeah,
more Western, or they're
I
embracing
think so.
their Korean
No, it's
heritage?
setting Asian beauty to Western standards a bit. Yeah. So the bigger eyes, the strong nose bridge, cheekbones,
It's
all of that.
terrifying
The
because
bigger chest. Yeah.
how do you think beauty's changed in the last sort of 10 years, and how, in
Yeah.
Korea, what you're seeing in the UK and the States?
Well, I think it's twofold. So in some ways with this whole wokeness, you're seeing so much more inclusivity, right? You're seeing plus size models, you're seeing models of all different walks of life, diversity, models with vitiligo, models who are black, brown, Asian, whatever, across all different spectrums of beauty and disabilities as well. And that's interesting, which is great, but then at the same time, you see this surge of and almost this normalization of plastic surgery, and everybody's getting their lips done, and everybody is getting a little bit of a nip and tuck or nose or, eyelid surgery. Like, in Korea, getting your eyes done is like getting braces.
Mhm.
Everybody gets a double eyelid surgery, period.
So they're trying to kind of hark back to that woman who did your makeup, trying to give you that kind of,
Yes.
getting the eye socket.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to replicate that
Yeah.
in makeup. And I think
Mhm.
it's just everyone, and here it's the same. People are looking, and looking very similar with a lot of the stuff they're doing, and you can
Mhm.
see a certain look. Like also, I think in certain, the Kim Kardashian look is very prevalent in sort of Arab culture, and it's tribal. People are very
Yeah.
much attached to tribes and how they look, and I guess it sort of makes you feel part of a team.
Yeah.
I look like that, so I'm accepted. Which
Mhm.
it's very interesting how beauty and makeup can have such a huge effect in that way.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I mean, and you see it even in London, like groups of girls out together, they all have the makeup the same way, all the hair the same way, and
It's very
yeah.
funny. And but what tell me what your favorite products are? What are the things that you love to use the most?
Gosh, right now I am a big fan of the Jones Road beauty brand.
Oh,
This is
love
Bobbi
them.
Brown,
Yeah.
right? So remember, she has Bobbi Brown, and then she had like a 35-year non-compete or something crazy, and with Estee Lauder after they bought her company. And then the second she was released from that, she started Jones Road Beauty, and I'm just in love with this stuff. First of all, I love it because it's very easy. I use my fingers for everything because I'm definitely like get up and get out the
Yeah.
door
The
type of
balm,
person.
their beauty
Their
balm.
beauty balm.
How do you
Their
find
hair
that?
balm.
It's not
I
too
love it.
oily.
No, I like it, because especially because I'm 50, right? And this whole
Your
dewy
skin, if anyone's listening to
thank
this
you.
house, your skin is absolutely beautiful and dewy, and whatever you're doing.
So it's the dewiness. It's this like everybody's going for glass skin now, which
Yeah.
I think is a little bit too wet. So in
Mm.
Korea, everybody looks a bit
Is it the
it's
wet something donut, which I still never
the
quite
wet
get right?
donut.
Not wet donut, but I think like glazed donut
Oh,
look.
the
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, it's a wet
Yeah.
donut, not glass.
Yeah,
But yeah.
but I don't love that kind of, like, wet look, but, like, the glass skin look I think is a bit too much, but I do like a dewiness, and so the Jones Road Beauty definitely gives you that dewiness. I mean, sometimes it's annoying because your hair will stick to your skin,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
I do find that's the only
and
thing
then
with that balm. I love it, and she marketed it so
so
well,
well, so
but
well.
I just find it quite sticky. There are other
It
ones
can
out
be
there that
a little bit sticky,
yeah.
yeah, but it does moisturize,
Mm,
which I think is why it's a little bit sticky because, we just need moisture,
yeah.
right?
When you get to our age,
Yes,
we need
exactly,
moisture.
exactly, and so, and I find with a lot of powders and stuff, it'll actually, as the day goes on, it gets stuck in the wrinkles, you know what I mean? It gets cakey, and this, even her tinted moisturizer, her What the Foundation, it doesn't get cakey, it is just like a moisturizer,
Mm.
and it gives you that kind of like a little bit of a wet, dewy look, but it's very, very smooth, and since I've been using it, everyone's like, "Wow, your skin looks so good, your skin
Yeah.
looks so good." I'm like, "It's Jones Road."
But it is, it's funny that when you do change to certain brands and people do really notice, and when you get a
Mm,
thing that matches your skin, and because
yeah,
it's a science. It's like
it
cooking.
is,
It's
yeah.
the ingredients. What are the right ingredients to get the right flavor?
Yeah,
What's the right ingredients in makeup to get the right finish, and that
definitely.
works with the chemistry of your skin?
Yeah,
And it's alchemy,
definitely.
it is, the two are very well
Yeah,
beautifully connected in their own special
completely.
ways.
And I think the alchemy of cooking is almost the same with skin because sometimes like you just need to bring out the natural ingredients. You just need to bring out your natural features. And it's about, less is more sometimes. Sometimes all it needs is a kiss of olive oil, a little bit of,
A
lemon.
little mascara,
Exactly, right?
bit of
And
gloss
then
on the lips, and that's
yeah,
it.
and then I find if you wear too much makeup, it can age you.
Oh, yes, it
Right?
is.
And the same way, if you do too much plastic surgery too soon, it really ages you. And I feel so bad because you see these women who did a lot to plastic surgery too soon. I think it makes you lose your femininity,
Mhm.
right? They look like almost
You're distracted.
you're distracted and they lose almost the softness to
I think humans like a
yeah,
bit of fallibility. We don't want perfection.
yeah,
And when you see someone who's too perfect, everything is like too manufactured,
yeah,
you don't feel a warmer connection. And we're so
yes,
attuned with our eyes, I think.
that's
When you look at a face,
yeah,
we can read a face and so many nuances. We know when something's not right.
yeah,
So when you've got there's that balance with too much lip filler and not enough lip filler, or there's never enough, not enough lip, but when you've got too much and then there's a tiny bit, your eye can be drawn to it and it's distracting and you don't feel that humanity. And when someone's got a bit of I've got a funny dodgy tooth and I'm like, I want to keep my dodgy tooth because people go, oh, that's they feel human because
yes.
of that.
Yes. So there is something quite, I guess, captivating about the imperfection,
Yeah.
right? But in the same way, I think that if you do too much plastic surgery, it's almost too perfect, but in the way that it doesn't quite sit right because it doesn't necessarily when you notice it, it's not done right.
Yeah.
It doesn't work with your natural
Yeah,
kind
and
of
the eye
foundation.
sees that very
Yes.
quickly. Our
Yeah.
brains are so well
Mhm.
attuned to tiny, as a baby, when you look at your mother's face, you
Yeah.
can see her emotions change because that's
Totally.
your survival. So
Yeah.
as a human, you're looking at so carefully. When you
Yeah.
see something change,
Yeah.
it's absolutely terrifying. But what I want to know that people can actually come and see you
Oh, yeah.
and what you're doing, because obviously they can go to your restaurants.
Mhm.
Taste of London.
Yes.
Tell me about Taste of London. Why are you doing it? Tell me a bit
I
about it.
am there at the Korean barbecue cookery school. So Korean barbecue is a thing, right?
Mhm.
If you never had Korean barbecue, you don't know what you're missing. So I'm there doing demos all day session and evening session
That's
all day long.
plenty if you're there.
Friday the 20th.
Yeah.
So come and check us out. And yeah, the smoke alone would lure you across the park to the Korean barbecue cookery school.
Bring your waterproof mascara, because if you're
Yes,
around the smoke, you'll go. So, the
exactly.
girly little tip, makeup thing.
Definitely. Definitely.
And you're gonna be there all day doing your
Yes.
demos. People can learn a few things. Can they ask you questions? Come and ask you some questions?
Yeah.
So anything they
Ask
might have heard
questions.
you talk
I
about.
think I might be selling my book there too. I can't remember. I think so. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I have a new book out called Cake Quick, Korean Food in 30 Minutes or Less too.
30 minutes or less. Oh,
Yes.
exciting.
Yes.
I need
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I don't spend a long time cooking. I'm terrible.
Nobody does anymore.
I know, but
Nobody can.
I
Yeah.
know.
It's nobody has time. I don't even have time.
I know, but coming
Yeah.
to see, so Good Cookery Book, that's
Mhm.
30 minutes, love that.
Mhm.
And then coming to see you, Taste of London,
Yeah.
and go online, get tickets to
Mhm.
come and visit.
Definitely.
Well, I want to talk more
Mhm.
at some stage with you about more what you're eating and your skin, because I think there's the alchemy of it all. It's
Mhm.
magic. So,
Yeah.
but listen, Judy, thank
Thank
you so much for
you.
coming in. It's been
Thank
very, very
you.
interesting. So a massive thank you to Judy Joo. You can see her at Taste of London by visiting london.tastefestivals.com and visit soulbird.co.uk, Judy's amazing Korean food restaurant. And that's it for True Reflections this week with me, Gia Mills. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe where you are watching or listening. And you can find me across your social media by searching at True Reflections Podcast. I'll be back next week with another celebrity to talk through their beauty experiences, their favourite products, and delving deeper into how the ideals of beauty shapes not just our physical appearance, but the core of our identities. Until then, have a lovely week.